I have to admit something, and you're probably not gonna like it. I committed a crime, and it rhymes with tax persuasion. Okay, now that's out of the way. It'd be a shame if a super cute anime girl with a caked up warp trotter busted down my door and arrested me right now. That'd be so awful. I said! Topaz is the newest hunt unit in Honkai Star Rail, and I'm 99% sure she's only hunt because we have too many damn Nihility characters. And in today's video, I'm gonna be telling you how to play and build her. If you like these videos, make sure to click the like button so YouTube knows it doesn't suck, and subscribe if you like caked up warp trotters. My name is Braxophone, and let's talk about Topaz and Numby. Topaz and Numby are completely unique characters unlike any other units in the game. Essentially, Numby is a summon that does follow-up attacks, and they have their own place in the action order, and you can sort of adjust where they're at in the action order based on— wait a second. Realistically, when you play Topaz and Numby, you're actually just playing Numby. Topaz is a Pokemon trainer, and when you send her Pokemon Numby into battle, she cleans up, and Topaz collects all the debt. Her talent is an 80-speed Numby that has stats based off of Topaz. Numby will attack on her own, and her damage is follow-up attack damage. You might be worried about her low base speed, but what you should be worried about is the IRS. When you use Topaz's skill, she marks the enemy with proof of debt, which is just a fancy way of saying you're going to be mauled by a caked up warp trotter. The mark also increases the damage an enemy takes from follow-up attacks, which is actually a bit better than damage bonus in this game. An enemy will be given that mark by default whenever nobody has one, so like at the start of battle, for example. But with her skill, you can move it around. Whenever an ally hits an enemy marked by proof of debt with a follow-up attack, Numby's action gets boosted forward by 50%. What's cool about Topaz, though, is that even though she is just a debt collector, she's also American. Her skill is counted as follow-up attack damage, and her gun also does a lot because her basic attack also counts as follow-up attack damage with one of her major traces. This also means that every time Topaz shoots an enemy that's marked, Numby gets 50% closer to her homing attack. Now, whenever you use Topaz's ultimate, you gain stonks, which gives Numby a huge increase on damage multiplier and some bonus crit damage. And it also makes your other teammates invest, because for the next 2 Numby attacks, any attacks from an ally against a marked enemy will get Numby a 50% action forward, regardless of if they're follow-up attacks or not. Mostly, you just want to use this on cooldown unless you have stacks up. Another thing is that by using Topaz's skill, it counts as a Numby attack, and you'll miss some free Numby advances if you use it under her ultimate. So if you're not just finishing up a wave, I recommend using her basic attack when her ultimate is up. If you're confused, here's a whole list of things that makes Numby move up. Follow-up attack damage against marked enemies, Topaz basic and skill on marked enemies, and any teammate using any skill, basic, or ultimate on a marked enemy after stonks. Now, something worth keeping in mind is that Topaz doesn't gain energy from Numby's attacks unless she has a stack or 2 from her ultimate whenever Numby actually uses the attack, and that's only after you activate the trace that allows it. The other trace to know about is that a marked enemy with fire weakness will take 15% more damage from Topaz and Numby. Enemies will truly resent that they were defeated by a caked up warp trotter. Because her skill and basic attack are follow-up attacks, you can play Topaz as a skill point heavy or light character. For example, if you're playing Topaz as a support for someone like Jingyuan, you can use her basic attack more to give Jingyuan all the skill points and help buff Lightning Lord. But if you're playing her as a hypercare unit, which surprisingly she's pretty okay at, you can use her skill a lot more to push higher damage. The last thing about Topaz and Numby is that by using her technique outside of battle, you get up to 10,000 credits a day. Wow! All it takes is somewhere between 10 and 20 technique uses a day, so after a whole year of using her technique daily, you can save close to 1,500 Trailblaze power on credits, which goes to show that she's actually pretty terrible at collecting debt. Oh yeah, and the free 60 energy and all the other stuff. I don't really want to read that. For talent priority, level her talent and skill, and then ultimate and basic, most importantly, level everything for her because you're gonna use her entire kit and she wants your money. At first, Topaz probably seems pretty easy to build, right? She's fire, there's a fire set, speed set, and an attack set. They're all pretty straightforward options, but have you seen the mole on her thigh? It's a skin growth, and while she's got a lot of them, growth, moles themselves are an abnormality. Sure, they're normal in that everyone has them, but Topaz's might indicate something different. Maybe that she's not like the other characters who have sets that are straightforward and in the game. Maybe there's some foreshadowing going on. Nah, I'm probably full of shit. Look, all I'm saying is that we don't have a follow-up attack set yet, and if they ever released one, it might change up her best in slot, so make sure to keep your eyes peeled for new relics since we haven't seen any since Blade. That has been, actually, how long ago was that? I don't even remember. For now, now, though, her best relic options are going to be the 4-piece Wild Wheat set for the basic attack damage boost if you're trying to play your skill point positive, and the speed and the attack. That's all going to be really nice. 4-piece Firesmith set, a mix of 2 pieces from the Firesmith set, Wild Wheat for attack, and the Messenger set for speed. They're all honestly kind of in the same ballpark. Dude, it is so hard to say Firesmith set like fast. I don't know why. For planar sets, you'll want to go with Inert Salsoto for the crit rate and follow-up damage bonus, but if you don't have a good set of that, Space Sealing Station and Rudolent Arena are also pretty okay options. For main stats, go for crit rate or crit damage chest, speed on your boots, fire damage sphere, and an attack percent rope. Energy regen is kind of weird on Topaz since not all of Numby's attacks generate energy, but there might be an interesting playstyle with ER rope later on. I just don't really recommend it for now. Speed boots make her attack more, which is also more frequent Numby attacks and more energy overall, and the crit body is going to be an increase to her personal damage. She may seem like just a debt collector, but she's also pretty good at shooting people who commit tax fraud. Here's a quick build overview for your favorite Pokemon trainer with a gun. If you're playing Topaz, you probably either enjoy Hurricane Season or you feel guilty about your last tax year. Or you think she's hot as f. But the great thing about committing tax crimes is that you have more money to spend on light cones. And with that said, there are good free-to-play options, and for legal reasons, that was a joke. Topaz's signature light cone is a top-tier pick for her and adds a ton of value for her and your team. Giving 18% crit rate and increasing follow-up attack damage is great, but it also gives your teammates crit damage against enemies that are hit by the wearer's follow-up attacks. It's a hunt light cone with support capabilities, but it also just has the best art in the entire game, and it's not even close. You'll find that some 4-star light cones with high uptime and high superimpose are also pretty good, like Swordplay and Only Silence Remains, and of course cruising in the Stellar Sea is a fantastic free-to-play option that you definitely don't want to overlook. River Flows in Spring is a solid light cone as well, but I highly recommend cruising in the Stellar Sea to free-to-play players unless you have a super high superimposed Swordplay. Seala's light cone is also pretty good, but I'm pretty sure that's actually just glued to Seala on your account, so I know I didn't go into too much detail of all these light cones, but here is going to be a chart sort of comparing damage for Topaz. Take everything with a grain of salt since different situations can have different outcomes based on enemy stats, but overall it's a pretty solid guideline on what you can expect with different light cones on this character. Welcome to the Top Ass Team Guide, where we're going to be talking about Top Ass and her best. Okay, so, we got Asta. Okay, so Topaz buffs follow-up attacks, and like my favorite way to play her has actually just been with Clara, because you basically will just give Svarog the big taunt with Lynx, and then with Topaz, you're just getting a bunch of follow-up attack bonus, and Topaz is basically a DPS, and then Asta is just an excuse to use the word ass again. No, she actually buffs Clara and Topaz, so like, I don't know, man, it's pretty good. Like, this team is like probably one of her best ones. So another thing you can do is actually just run Topaz as like a hyper carry, and you can do that with like Tingyun and Bronya if you want, but you don't actually have to use Bronya. I was just using Bronya because I can't play this game without Bronya. But basically what you can do is just Giga buff Topaz, and she can actually deal some pretty solid damage between her and Numby. The downside with Bronya is that her damage bonus is not really gonna carry over onto Numby's turns because it's gonna end with Topaz's turn. So like sometimes you'll get it, but like most of the time you're not gonna get it. So the real benefit of Bronya is actually just accelerating the speed at which Sonic the Hedgehog actually attacks. But if you want something like Giga value on a hyper carry team, you can also play like Silverwolf or Pela. And then Japard is just here because you're gonna like be really mad if I say Fushuan or Locha again. One team I really did like playing is this Himiko Topaz team because you can break with Silverwolf and Fushuan. Both Silverwolf and Fushuan have pretty good break values. Topaz and Numby have really good break values, and Himiko's are also pretty good. And when you break with Himiko, obviously you get the follow-up attacks. So Topaz and Numby are able to help Himiko be a better unit overall. And with this team, you're gonna be breaking quite a bit, so you should be able to proc Himiko pretty frequently. Not really a top team, but if you are someone who played Honkai in back third and was really sad, yeah, I don't know, it's pretty good. I tested it. It was fine. One way that a lot of people are going to want to play Topaz is with Jinguan, because Jinguan has been kind of like mid since, I don't know, since people decided he was mid. I always thought he was fine. Playing Topaz with Jinguan is basically going to buff Lenny the Lightning Lord and help you get some more damage overall. And like I said, Topaz adds a fair bit of damage herself. So between these characters, if you just keep spamming basic attack with Topaz, and then also using Jinguan for that AoE Lightning Lord damage and just his AoEs in general, combining that with Pela, who can defense shred the entire enemy team, you can dish out some pretty solid damage. And this is also one of her better use cases, especially especially if you've just been someone that wants to enjoy the long-haired lion man for a really long time. And then I put Locha here because you guys are going to complain even if I don't put him there, so like there's not really a point in changing anything. And then I made this team so I could farm. Don't use it. Now, if you're thinking about Eidolons for Topaz, then that means it's too late to save you and the IRS has already got you in cuffs. Unless you pay everything back, of course. One thing I will say about Topaz is that she is very much here to collect your debt, and some of her Eidolons and her light cone as well are very high value and make her a lot better of a character. For example, against enemies marked with proof of debt, E1 is going to increase your crit damage of follow-up attacks by 25%, stacking up to 2 times, depending on how many follow-up attacks the marked enemy has taken. So if you're against a boss that's been marked for most of the fight, you basically just get free 50% crit damage on your follow-ups against him, which is pretty insane for a first Eidolon and massively increases her potential with other follow-up attackers and also herself. E2 basically just makes Numby's attacks give you 5 more energy, which makes the follow-up attacks almost work as they should and gives you 5 extra on skill as well. Huge gains for her energy. E3 is a skill and basic attack level up, which is good all around, and E4 is gonna push Topaz's action forward by 20% whenever Numby takes a turn. Keep in mind that action forward doesn't count for when you use Topaz's skill, it's only for Numby's follow-up attacks. E5 is gonna be an ultimate and talent level increase, and E6 is basically just a massive overall damage increase for Numby, since you'll get an extra use of Windfall Bonanza from ult and also get a 10% fire resistance penetration. That's right, idiot, prepare to get penetrated by the caked up Warp Trotter. No, honestly, it's just a really big buff. For the small price of $10 billion, you can turn this debt collector into the US military. Between going for her light cone and E1, I'd say to go for her light cone since it's literally the cutest art in the entire damn game, but realistically, E1 is gonna be better for crit damage buff to both the caked up Warp Trotter and any other follow-up attackers, so I'd pick E1 up over the light cone, even though I really don't want to. Her Eidolons really are pretty insane, and I'm not gonna recommend that you get them because they cost money, or just like really good luck, I'm sure most of you don't have. But if that's something you want to do, don't let me stop you. Just also don't forget who you owe the rest of your polls to. Subscribe!